Hey guys, it's Captain Mark Kayla from 38 Light Tackle.
And I'm Kayla Burleson with VIP 38 Magazine, and this is like our 5th time trying to do this video. We've got dogs running around on the boat and everything, but we are going to persevere. So Mark, we are, in a new location today, right? We're in a completely different location. Tell us a little bit about where we are and what we're doing.
We're on my brand new 2022 Everglades 243. There are 2 puppies running around on the boat, just making everything dirty, and somebody found my fillet gloves.
Those gloves that we were talking about last week that smelled really bad.
Yeah, let's get out of there. Let's get out of there.
She has found the fillet gloves. But when Mark purchased the new boat, he's going through all these different challenges, and I wouldn't say challenges, but just things that maybe you've been reminded of having to figure out since you had your boat so perfect last time. So as we've been doing that, we've been coming up with a lot of really great topics to chat with you guys about in the future. But for today, we're going to focus on
this week in particular, some weather.
Weather. That's always the big question for everybody. You can try to look at it, you can try to study it, you can listen to the meteorologist, but you just never know. Sometimes you have to make that last minute decision no matter what you're being told the night before, the week before. And so we have Captain Mark here who has been studying. I mean, you should be a meteorologist by now anyway.
I always joke with people on my boat and say a fishing captain is about as close as you can get to being a meteorologist. And for me, we live now in this boat maybe a half hour from Destin Pass, but we're on the far east end of the bay. So for us, it's a hike in the morning to figure out. Well, the last thing I want to have to figure out when we get there, is can we go offshore or not? So I'm pretty cognizant on weather patterns and studying everything and watching what's coming. Mainly because I was a skier in a different life. I like to try to chase storms coming across the country. So if I can see them coming across the west, I can pretty much predict somewhat what's going to happen here. So there's a list of different apps that I use and weather forecasts that I like to look at to help me decide what's going to happen. So this week in particular doesn't look very good. There's a big cold front moving through, and they've already issued a small craft advisory through Wednesday morning. And as we're making this, it's Monday? Yeah, today's Monday.
Today's Monday.
Every day runs together when you get to go fishing. But for us, a lot of weather this week, and the dogs, these guys are everywhere. This guy is right in front of the camera now, too.
Oh, yeah. Harper and Brindley, by the way, I'm sure you'll get to meet them a lot more in the future.
Oh, here she goes. So the big things that I look for are big fronts moving across, winds, rain, and seas. So there are a couple apps that I use and I look at a lot. Windfinder Pro is a big one that really shows me the wind speed and swell heights, and if she falls off the boat, I'm gonna laugh real hard. Okay.
I thought she did.
So Windfinder is a huge one for me that really shows the wind forecast. That one I look at a lot, and I use the NOAA forecast. The NOAA forecast is good, and the 2 of those combined are the majority of it. I'll use my app called MyRadar, especially when I'm out on the boat too, because it keeps a good live view of
super accurate
different radar stations coming together for one app. But there's a couple layers you can turn on in the MyRadar app, like wind and the frontal boundaries. So for instance today, and I don't know if you'll be able to see it on this or if we can add a screenshot in or something, but there's a frontal boundary directly over us. It's getting close. That blue line that's moving over. So, and that red one too. So when you get these frontal boundaries that move in close, you can really predict or say like, uh-oh, something's changing in temperature, pressure, or something. And that always makes the water pretty bumpy. So wind, pressure changes, frontal boundaries, and swell forecasts and sea heights. There are a couple other things that I look at. NOAA has some, or the National Weather Service has live buoy readings for offshore. I think it's 40 miles south of Pensacola that actually shows actual live water temperature, camera pictures, swell height and swell period. I look at those a lot too to see what's the actual data, and we'll use that too when we're offshore and we look at it and we're like, oh, it's what is this, 1 foot and maybe 10-mile-an-hour winds, and you look at it and it was 15 to 17 with 3-foot swells, and you're like, wow, I was way off on that.
We knew it was a little bit bumpier than that, right?
It was bumpy over the weekend for sure. But but what I did really, just because I got sick of riding around to the pass or checking 5 or 6 different apps, I actually put little pieces of code on my website from each app. So there's an embedded Windfinder forecast, the buoy data readings are in there, the National Weather Service actual weather forecast, the NOAA wave forecast, and most importantly, live webcams for Gulf Bay, Pass, everything. I put it all on my website just so I could look at it all in one spot.
You really, you know, there are all those apps and they all have really good data, but you know, one of the things is you do want to go ahead and look at more than one app, obviously, because you know, maybe one hasn't been updated yet. Maybe it's still running a little bit behind, because these things do update pretty often, right?
Yeah, and the models update normally in the morning and in the afternoon, and sometimes at 6 o'clock at night. So when you see all that stuff coming, like I had a buddy today text me and say, hey, looks awesome today. And he sent me a screenshot from an app that did make it look good, but just experience will show it's not, just because the beach looks nice and the wave forecast on the beach itself is low, with that front moving through, that big cold front, and especially this week too, we've had a lot of north winds, and it's frustrating for guys. I'll cancel trips when I know it's 25 knots out of the north. It's going to be bumpy out, but the land will knock that all down, so the beach looks flat, and everyone's like,
the beach is beautiful.
The beach is beautiful. Why would you cancel? I'm like, trust me, 2 miles offshore, it's going to be a totally different story.
It's not quite as pretty that far out, but I think, and again, that does go to show, look at more than one app, you know, take those 2 sets of information and put them together, and you'll learn these things. You'll kind of see, you'll get the eye that he has, where he's learned, oh man, you know, it looks good right now, but it's not going to be good. And those webcams, that's another simple thing that, you know, if you don't have the opportunity to go and check the water or go look at the beach beforehand, you can log in, go take a look at some of those beach cams, some of those bay cams, and really see what's happening on the water, so that as you're looking at that app, you can compare.
Yeah,
you can compare to see if that's actually what's happening.
But that's it is. It's a lot of experience. But the thing is, and that's why we're doing stuff like this, I think, is because we've had people show us little tricks to make the day better, and I guess safer too. But I think somebody actually suggested, hey, can you make a video on that? So if you have any other suggestions, that's good too. But I guess to wrap it up, right, I use Windfinder Pro to look at wind and swell forecasts.
They do have a free version, but the Pro is going to be the better. Obviously, it's going to give you more detailed information.
I use MyRadar with certain layers turned on, with wind and especially the frontal boundaries. And if you zoom out far enough, you can see everything moving across the country. And you know, everything moves west to east, and then it'll hit the Gulf and kick north a little bit. So you can kind of pattern what's going on. So it's the National Weather Service wave forecast, MyRadar, Windfinder, the live buoy readings to see what's actually going on, and and some webcams, and that really helps me make my decision in the morning on whether or not I want to take a family that far for 8 hours and try to catch fish. So those are the apps that I use to really make the decision on whether or not I want to take a family or just myself or you and my friends.
Yeah, right.
I don't want to get beat up all day for doing that. So
it goes a long way, and especially if you're a charter captain too, you want to have those good days. You don't want to take a family out
right.
and, you know, them have an absolutely awful experience and never want to go fishing again. So
yeah.
you know, take that advice. Look up those apps. Send in the comment section if you need to know what those were again, and we can try to list those again for you and try to put some screenshots in. But regardless, take a look at that, study it a little bit, and make sure that you're safe out there. Make sure that, you know, you're having a good fishing day and your family's having a good fishing day. And
yeah, my big thing, my goal on every trip is I want people to want to fish again. So and I'm not one of the guys who just wants to go out and make a paycheck. I really enjoy this, and I want people to want to fish again.
Absolutely.
So I don't want somebody in the back thrown up over the side when I could have seen that coming with a couple.
You know, I don't know. Sometimes that's pretty good for chum, though.
That's a story for another time.
Yeah,
but
we'll talk about that a little bit.
one of the
later.
reasons I don't like triggerfish anymore.
Oh, that's disgusting. That's disgusting. Well, guys, go ahead and take this advice that we're giving you. Like Mark said, this is stuff that's come from Gulf Coast fishing for the past 5+ years. So we're wanting to share all that knowledge with you. But in the meantime, like, share, subscribe, and we'll see you next time.
Yep. Thanks, guys.